All right. So here I'm gonna show kind of a ridiculous VST rack that I've been messing with. This is essentially just a little experiment. And so basically what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be turning this, like some cloth whooshes, into explosions. Right. They're not very realistic. You know, I could probably tweak a bunch of stuff. But the big thing I wanted to try doing is, the big limitations is I wanted to do it all in VST Rack, so I can't automate. And also, I didn't want to use any, like, fog convolver or altiverb or any sort of, like, IR. I wanted it to be all digitally, like, algorithmically done. So I'm going to, I guess, bypass everything. And I guess I'll walk through sort of like the process of how I made this. So this is a thing I sort of stole from an old coworker, who tried to do the same thing. And basically an explosion, right, is essentially just like characterful noise, right? You know, it's a huge crack. It's got a lot of bass to it, and then the thing that makes it interesting, right, is the cadence, right? So what I wanted to do with this was, I wanted to basically make a quick transient and then a longer transient, so like a boom, and then I wanted the tails to sort of go and sort of taper off, right? So kind of how I did that, and so a couple things too. So the big way that I'm getting the filter or the movement is with this filter freak right here. And so one of the cool things about VST Rack is every time you click, it resets the LFO, right? All right, so this is kind of the building block, right? So I have this this sort of shape right here, right? And this took a little bit of fine tuning, but I wanted the filter to basically fully open and fully close. I could actually maybe pull it back a little bit. All right. And so the two things then is now I need to basically make it noise. So add my friend HE2, right? I really like that one. It's got some like squelchy bits, right? And then I added some Transient Designer, so you know, pulling the attack way up. And this is all happening before, right? So I'm really trying to like, because I know that it's gonna grab the first thing that I click on, right? Even though this is a smooth transition, because I'm clicking in the middle of the file, right? The Transient Designer doesn't really know that there was a beginning, so it's just going to immediately grab it and smack it into the filter freak and the distortion, right? And then from there, I think I added this trans mod. Oop, come on, click please. Yeah, and so I have the overshoot really high, and I have the overdrive up. Again, I'm trying to like really, really squash the transient, right? You know, that's quite distorted and noisy, right? All right, there's nothing really interesting happening. And then, so from here, like I kind of had the start of it. I think I probably added some... I rolled off some of the super low end that was getting bassy. Added some Transient Designer. Close that. Added some Transient Designer. You know, multi-band, so each band is slightly separate. It's getting quite loud. Ow. I'm gonna turn my limiter on. right? And if I open my limiter, we're probably slamming it, yeah, like 19 dB, right? Yeah, right. So we're very loud right now. Yeah, then I added some bass probably, right? And this is being triggered by an envelope, right? Oop. So adding bass right at the start, and then the envelope will close as well. And then probably some more distortion, nothing as crazy, right? So then the next thing was I needed to get the tails, right? And I wanted this to sort of be canyony, because I really just like the sound of canyons. And so canyons really are just like diffused echoes, right? So a long time ago, I found this trick with Space Modulator. And I think this is the one. Or is this the one? Which one is it? I think it's this one, yeah. This third one, right? So with the ensemble and the symphony modes, right? If you crank the feedback, you can get some really, really cool sounding, like really diffused, washed out reverbs, or delays, right? So we have a little bit of like some sort of stereo slap, really quiet. But if I add some other ones, and again, these are like super low mix, right? Right, and that kind of like maybe could have some more high end to it, but it kind of has that washed out canyony echo, and then a little bit of super taps. Right, this by itself without the other ones is right, a little off, a little weird. Right. You know, nothing too crazy, but just a little bit of detail that's going to get washed out. Right. And then I'm adding more transient shaping. You know, I'm trying to get an explosion here. So the transient is kind of like the most important part, right? Right, and that's pretty cool. You know, and then so from there too, now that I have my thing, I wanted to shape the tail a bit, right? So I have this sort of like slow moving envelope that's going to kind of like wash in and out. That's kind of like trying to mimic how different echoes off of different walls that are further distances are kind of wash out a little bit further. Right. It's subtle. Yeah, I'll crank the res so you can hear it. Right. Might even bring it further down. Slow it a bit. All right, I'll turn off this super taps. Right, cool. And then I added some limiting. Nothing crazy. Right. And then last but not least, a little tone shaping EQ. Right. Boosting the lows. I do mostly dynamic EQs. I find that it feels the most natural because it's really only reacting to when things kind of get out of hand. And then I have another Transient Designer here that's just sort of doing a little bit of like last minute, adding a little bite, etc. Right? And then the last few things that I have here that are muted is I added this really subtle flange that's kind of going random. And this is just to sort of add a little bit of that comb filteriness that you can get with echoes kind of bouncing off of different walls. It's again pretty subtle. right? And then I added ProMB, right? And this is just sort of shaping some of the, I'm trying to shape the noise, right? Like I said, it's sort of like characterful noise. So I'm using ProMB before it hits the filter freak to sort of shape this distorted signal that's going into it. And then, yeah, that's basically the sound. The last thing I had was a voice denoise, just getting rid of some of the super harsh. Right, I mean, it's a harsh sound by itself. I wonder, actually. Right, if I close all these windows, try a different sound. Right, it's slightly different. It's more or less the same, but one of the cool things you can do now is kind of once you have your sound, if you go to the filter freak, the big one that's like kind of shaping it, right, if I make it a little bit faster, you know, right, it's a lot slower. Let's do this, right. I think around like 50, right, or 0.5. It's around where it stops kind of sounding like it's one thing, right? But then you can kind of start doing that, and then you can start, you know, once you kind of have this as the baseline. I mean, this is mostly a thought experiment. I wouldn't kind of always use this sort of stuff in my day-to-day, but it's just sort of like a fun little experiment to try, right? But then, you know, you can start experimenting with, well, what happens if I use Devil Lock instead of HG to distort? What happens if I, you know, add different reverbs, add different delays and stuff like that? And you can really sort of like explore like sort of different sounds. You know, one thing that's kind of cool, you know, I might take Echo Boy Jr. maybe. I guess I'll get rid of that. Justin, if you're watching this, give me more rack space. You know, and I might take something like this and then throw this right after the filter freak. Was hoping this was gonna be like a it's probably just all the transient shapers that are pulling it back. If I pull it further down the line, yeah. You know, let me, you know, it's trying to get some of that like Ben Burt-esque imploder sort of sound, failing. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of take this and sort of start running with it and start adding some interesting sort of textures to it, adding tonal elements and stuff. But yeah, hope this helps or, you know, inspires you to try something a little different. Again, Justin, give me more rack space, please. See you, everybody.